Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming this morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Brandon. I'm Senior Director of International Relations Programs for the Asia Foundation here in Washington. The Asia Foundation was founded in 1954, and that is in that same year we opened our office in Bangkok, and we have programmed continuously there for the last 69 years. We're pleased to have our Thailand country representative, Tom Parks, who is here virtually from Bangkok, as well as two former Thailand country representatives, Kim McQuay, who was representative back for eight years, and Catherine Del Pino, who was rep for about what, two or three. And so we're pleased to have them here. We're also very pleased to be partnering with the Royal Thai Embassy and Ambassador Tani Sangrat in organizing this program commemorating 190 years of diplomatic relations. On this date, March 20th, in 1833, the United States and Thailand signed the Treaty of Amity and Commerce, which established diplomatic relations between both our countries. It's the oldest bilateral relationship the United States has with any Asian country, a full 25 years before the United States established relations with Japan in 1858. At that time, Andrew Jackson was the president of the United States. He was the seventh president, and Phra Nang Klau, or King Rama III, sat on the Chakri throne when the treaty was signed. Over the decades, the Asia Foundation has taken pride in working in trying to strengthen U.S.-Thai relations by holding bilateral dialogues in the 70s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, and 2010s. And in fact, the Root Room, where we're sitting right now, is where we held our bilateral discussions in 2002 and 2018. And I think it's befitting that we're holding today's discussion on the state of the bilateral relationship as we take stock of it in 2023. Our program this morning is divided into two parts. The first part we have is opening remarks from Senator Tammy Duckworth, who is not here, but she made pre-recorded remarks. And Melissa Brown, the Deputy Secretary of State for Southeast Asia, will give her remarks on behalf of the State Department. And His Excellency Tani Sangrat, Thailand's ambassador to the United States, will then give his. We'll then go into a panel discussion, and our panel will feature Professor Catherine Del Pino, Professor Emeritus at Georgetown University, as retired Colonel Larry Redmond, who has followed U.S.-Thailand relations for at least half of his professional career. And we have virtually from Bangkok, Dr. Pongpisut Busparat, who will join us on the Zoom platform. And I'll introduce everyone a little bit more formally later. But let us begin with our first speaker, which will be Senator Duckworth from Illinois. Unfortunately, she's not able to join us today, but we appreciate her making the pre-recorded remarks. And let me introduce her. She is an Iraq War veteran. She served for 23 years in the U.S. Army. She retired as a lieutenant colonel. She was a Black Hawk helicopter pilot while in the Army, and she is a Purple Heart recipient. She entered politics. Initially, she was an assistant secretary in the Department of Veterans Affairs, and before being elected to the U.S. Congress, where she served 2 terms in the House of Representatives. And she's been a U.S. Senator from the state of Illinois since 2017. So with that, let us turn to the video where Senator Duckworth will make brief remarks.
Swatika. I'm sorry I can't be with you all tonight. Thank you to the Thai Embassy and the Asia Foundation for hosting tonight's event. I want to take a moment to commemorate the 190th anniversary of the United States partnership with Thailand. I'm an American, but my Thai heritage makes me a living example of the unshakable bond between our two nations. Our nations have a long, long history of friendship. For centuries, our countries have learned from and leaned on each other, militarily, diplomatically, economically, culturally, you name it. From the environment to our economies, national security to cybersecurity, we've helped one another grow and evolve, adapting to a world that's ever more connected, adapting to an era in which technology allows allies half a world away to be there for each other in half an instant. There's a reason Thailand is often called Washington's oldest ally in Asia. Ever since an American ship landed on Thailand's shores more than 200 years ago, ever since President Andrew Jackson and Thai King Rama III signed the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, formalizing peaceful relationship between our countries, ever since King Mongkut offered to send elephants to President Abraham Lincoln an ocean away, our nations have proven that there's no greater asset than a partner you can count on in times of both peace and conflict. Time after time, we've worked side by side to catch the bad actors running international criminal networks, to give humanitarian relief to those who need it, to keep the peace far beyond our own borders. We've seen our shared interests and values evolve over the past 190 years. Today, more than 300,000 people of Thai descent, myself included, live in the United States, and thousands more come to study every semester. Under a 2002 framework, hundreds of U.S. companies have invested in Thailand, fueling bilateral trade of over $74 billion in 2020 alone. And the Joint U.S. Military Assistance Group, Thailand, helps organize more than 400 joint exercises per year, including Cobra Gold, the largest multilateral exercise in the Indo-Pacific. In 2023, with more and more geopolitical threats rising by the day, the strength of our bond is as important as ever. Our alliance provides some sense of stability amidst that chaos, some sense of security amidst the unpredictability. It helps make a tenuous situation a little bit more tenable. And as in other countries, Thailand's path to democracy has had its challenges as well as its advances. As Thailand prepares to hold national elections for the second time since the military coup of 2014, I'm looking forward to an election that is free and fair, an election that cements Thailand on the road to a stable democratic system based on the rule of law, civilian authority, and respect for internationally recognized human rights. So let me just close by saying, for the progress that Thailand has made toward that more democratic future, for the friendship our two nations have shared, as well as for all the years I was lucky enough to call Thailand my home, I am endlessly grateful. And I'm forever proud to call myself a Thai American. Khop khun ka.
Very nicely done in 3.5 minutes. Our next speaker will be Melissa Brown, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary with responsibility for the offices of Mainland Southeast Asian Affairs and Maritime Southeast Asian Affairs. Prior to her current position, she served as the chargé at the U.S. mission to ASEAN in Jakarta. And prior to that, she was the Counselor for Economic and Political Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Singapore and served as the acting chief of mission for 1 year, where she oversaw the execution of the historic 2018 U.S. North Korean Singapore summit. She's a Southeast Asia expert with a strong trade policy background. She's been previously assigned to Jakarta as the Trade and Investment Unit Chief there at the embassy. And she was also been detailed to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative and the State Department's Vietnam desk. And one of her earlier postings was in Bangkok, along with Mauritius. So with that, Melissa, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Sawadee ka. I'm so happy to be here today to celebrate our 190th anniversary and discuss also the future, what's up for the next 190 years ahead of us. A big thanks to the Asia Foundation, John, as well as the Thai Embassy, Ambassador Tani, thank you. The team has been really fantastic to work with, and I'm really excited to be here. You heard from my bio that I served in Bangkok, but that actually is a bit of an understatement because it was my first diplomatic posting. And for those of you, who know, your first posting is incredibly transformative and leaves quite an impression. So Thailand will always have a very special place in my heart. And in fact, I just returned there. I was there about 10 days ago for my most recent visit. And it was just, it was great to be back. Each and every time I'm there, I see what has changed and what has stayed the same. It is really a great honor for me to be able to work on advancing this deep and always evolving partnership. In some ways, it's like Bangkok, some things stay exactly the same, and some things change ever so quickly. I think looking at 2022, we can note it was a really momentous year. The Secretary Blinken, he made his first visit to Thailand. We signed our 2022 U.S.-Thailand communique. That was the Deputy Prime Minister Dawn, as well as Secretary Blinken. Then we had the Vice President travel to Bangkok for APEC leaders events, and also our first ever joint strategic and defense dialogue that took place here in Washington, D.C. But looking at 2023, I think we're already off to a great start. As both our people and our economies recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, we are building on our over 60 years of public health partnership. Just last week, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the director, Dr. Walensky, she was in Thailand to discuss how we can continue to work together to prevent, prepare, and respond to future pandemics, as well as addressing other emerging health threats. I think economically, we've seen our bilateral trade jump more than 50% over the past 2 years. This is, of course, due to reinvigoration of our relationship through several key priorities. So first, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. That's an initiative where we're working together to create a framework to address the 21st century challenges to ensure our collective economic prosperity. Thailand has been an enthusiastic partner throughout the IPEF negotiations. And note that I say partner, because this is something that we're doing, the United States and the other IPEF members shoulder to shoulder. Because of this enthusiasm, I am confident that we will see this framework bring tangible benefits to all of its members. A second, through the MOU on supply chain resilience, that's something where we're working to identify critical areas for cooperation and to create more efficient mechanisms for information sharing. This MOU, this is going to help us mitigate the impact of future pandemics, disasters, and other geopolitical events on our people. Third, we've seen a truly ferocious appetite from U.S. industry in engaging with Thailand, and as Ambassador Tani will tell you, vice versa. Just earlier this month, nearly 50 American companies joined VIV Asia. That's the largest animal feed trade show in Asia. They made connections and they strengthened our already significant agricultural business ties. Further, Bangkok was chosen as the hub for this year's Trade Winds. That's the largest U.S. government-led trade mission and business development forum. I know must be the same for you, but my LinkedIn is full of stories of from this week's events related to Trade Wind. This included a keynote speech by the Thai Prime Minister, and it encouraged the more than 100 companies across 20 sectors to expand U.S.-Thai economic and commercial activities. This, of course, builds on the Thai trade delegation that came to the United States in January to explore IT and also clean energy related opportunities. Looking ahead to April, through our annual energy policy dialogue, we're going to capitalize on this interest to bring industries from both of our countries together through a networking event that's focused on commercial opportunities to diversify our energy resources. Through the participation of our two business communities, we are confident that our shared leadership will drive job creation and innovation. Next, let me turn to security. Just last week, as Senator Duckworth mentioned, we wrapped up Cobra Gold, and the longest continually running multilateral exercise in the world. We showed up in full force. The United States sent its largest contingent of forces in a decade, with over 7,000 troops from 30 countries arriving in Thailand. The US and Thai service members led a command and control exercise, humanitarian civic action program projects, a humanitarian assistance disaster relief demonstration, and for the very first time, space and fully integrated cyber exercises. Bilateral coordination in these areas will continue through hundreds of smaller security engagements over the coming year, culminating with the celebration of the 70th anniversary of Just Meg Thailand in November. The renewal of this exercise is also a testament to the renewal of our relationship post-COVID. Together, we've weathered and rebounded from the pandemic. We've strengthened our ties in every area, politically, economically, and at the people-to-people level. With the Thai elections just around the corner, big news overnight, we anticipate a free, fair, inclusive, and transparent electoral process. Our US ambassador in Thailand, Ambassador Godek, and his team have met with the leadership and rank and file MPs from every single party across the political spectrum. And here in Washington, with leaders like Senator Duckworth, we see renewed interest in advancing the US-Thai relationships from our legislators, which I think is incredibly important and is in great thanks to Ambassador Tani and his colleagues' efforts as they've intensified engagement with Capitol Hill. I think that's going to continue to pay dividends overall in our relationship. At the people-to-people level, we've added new exchanges and new partnerships, and we've recently forged new educational ties. In March, we celebrated the first anniversary of the Thai-US Alumni Association. That was our first ever national conference in Bangkok. And then just last week, our mission in Thailand brought together 70 Thai and US educational institutions to explore new ways to build bridges between universities and students, to support cross-cultural understanding, and to promote innovation. One area where we're particularly excited is supporting budding sister city relationships between, for instance, Chiang Mai and Austin, Texas. We've been pleased as well to assist the ambassador on his visits to Texas and Florida to connect him with local organizations, making sure that the American people understand and benefit from the US-Thai relationship. The number of American visitors to Thailand is already rebounding to pre-pandemic levels, and the demand from Thai visitors to visit the United States is also on track to be the highest we've seen in 25 years. As you can see, our relationship, it's dynamic and it's enduring. But at the same time, we're pragmatic. The world is facing unprecedented challenges, from war to humanitarian crises to global warming. It's more important than ever that we confront challenges together. We see Thailand as a regional leader to help solve the problems, some of the thorniest problems. We applaud Thailand's steadfast commitment to combating trafficking in persons, and look forward to our continued cooperation in this area, as well as Thailand's regional leadership in that same important issue. We strongly support Thailand's progress in resolving statelessness for its minority communities. We also value contributions through the entire Mekong subregion as a leader and partner in the Mekong-US partnership. Thailand is helping to address the environmental, economic, and health impacts of the Mekong River's management. ACMEX is just one example of Thailand's commitment to leadership in the region. We understand that the MFA is building up ACMEX this year, and we stand ready to support this effort. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Thailand's outstanding leadership as host of last year's APEC, and securing APEC leaders' endorsement of the Bangkok goals on the biocircular green economy. We do want to thank Thailand for its strong support of our own APEC host year, the United States. And we will continue to work with Thailand and other APEC economies to implement the Bangkok goals to advance sustainable and inclusive growth throughout the region. In the same vein, Thailand is a critical partner in helping to resolve the regional crisis brought on by the Burma regime. Thailand plays a central role, particularly within ASEAN, in holding the regime accountable to the 5-point consensus and also urging an immediate end to the violence. Thailand is also a longstanding leader in providing humanitarian assistance and protection to the many groups of refugees and asylum seekers that are fleeing war and persecution. We commend Thailand for its ongoing efforts to strengthen the legal protection framework for refugees and asylum seekers. Wrapping it up, as our oldest ally in Southeast Asia, we are truly proud of this partnership and this alliance. As you've heard President Biden say, our alliances are the bedrock for our shared vision for a free and open, connected, prosperous, secure, and resilient Indo-Pacific region. I can assure you, we will continue to build our collective capacity and tackle our shared challenges with Thailand sitting shoulder to shoulder with us. As I close, I again want to thank the Embassy of Thailand and the Royal Thai government for its leadership. I'm very proud to be part of this enduring partnership. May this 190th anniversary be prosperous start to the next 190 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Our next speaker will be His Excellency Tani Sangrat. He was made ambassador or became ambassador to Washington arrived in November 2022. He aims to, his goals are three. As ambassador, to strengthen the U.S.-Thai alliance, to promote economic cooperation and sustainability, and to help enhance Thailand's soft power and participation with the Thai American community. And also high on his agenda is the celebration of the 190th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Thailand. Prior to that, he was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson for the information department, and last year he was responsible for the message coming from Thailand during the APEC meeting, where all the leaders gathered in Bangkok last November. He has served prior as an ambassador to Vietnam. And he helped to strengthen business partnerships, bilateral relations, and strengthen strategic partnership between Vietnam and Thailand. He's no stranger to the United States. He was served as Consul General in Los Angeles, and he was also, I first met him back, I guess, in 2007 when you were in the political section here in Washington. I remember you coming to our office upstairs, and during that time he facilitated the establishment of the Friends of Thailand Caucus in Congress. He's also served in Malaysia and has had a very distinguished career. So with that, Ambassador Tani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's our 190th year in celebration, and it falls exactly on today that I asked the kind support of Asia Foundation and colleagues around the room. I feel that I'm sitting among friends that it's all coming back to me now. That of the time over, it's been a long time. I'm very happy to be back in the United States. It's my second home. Spent quite a number of years here. I don't mean to go much into history. Thank you again, John, for organizing this for us. I'm honored to be part of this commemorative event. And I know that we have many experts who know much more about Thailand-US relations, much more than me, because I have spent many years working on other issues as well, and not just Thai-US relations. But our relations with the US is one of our most important that we have around the world. Our formal relations began in 1833 with the Treaty of Amity and Commerce. I know that Ajahn Catherine will go much into that and will put us more into historical perspective and the importance of our relations in today's world. Ever since 1833, almost 200 years, and we can be proud of it. But what we are doing now and what we will be looking into doing in the future, I think remains very much on our mind, especially on today with the, I don't want to break the news, but Melissa has just shared with us about the Royal Gazette that was dated on Friday about the dissolution of our House of Representatives, meaning that our election commission has lost already 3 days. With the EC election commission will have 5 days, if I'm not mistaken, to announce the election date. So if I'm not mistaken, the election date will have to be announced within Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. It may be a mistake, but that's my understanding at the moment. And this we have steps that are laid in front of me. It's quite complicated. I didn't want to share with all the details, but the election in Thailand is expected to be held in the first week or the second week of May, just to put everyone at ease. And I think every day the news out of Bangkok is the political parties jogging and campaigning, canvassing for votes all over the country. And we see that groups in Thailand, political groups, and not joining and dejoining, and it's hard to predict. So as a career officer, and I think I can speak for all of our folks back home as well, for the government people, that we will provide continuity in this time of change, and we will work tirelessly for the relations with all of our friends around the world, especially all of our friends right here in the United States. Our relations went back 190 years today, and it was reiterated at least 2 times during the course of our history. We have cemented the Manila Pact right after World War II, and leading up to that, we had the World War II that the U.S. and even in the colonial times have been the stabilizer, have been the helping hand for Thailand to leverage against colonial European powers back in the 1800s. So with that in perspective, taking into the period after World War II, the Cold War, we had the 1962 Thanat Rust Communique, which established a mutual defense treaty, which reinforced the Manila Pact of 1954. And throughout the Cold War, our armed forces have fought shoulder to shoulder together to uphold these promises. And fast forward after the Cold War to the period of 2003, U.S.-Thai cooperation continued to be close, and we were designated a major non-NATO ally. We were proud to join the endeavors in the war against terrorism, to provide and to cooperate on these very important efforts. And the U.S. has continued throughout these years to cooperate on maintaining and upgrading Thailand's defense capability in order to meet current challenges in the region and beyond. And earlier this month, Melissa Brown has mentioned about the copper goal. It's the exercise that we've always proud of. And this year, I was told that it was supposed to be a light year, but we had the largest contingent from not only the US, but our friends in the region as well. but with reportedly one loss of life, and I hereby offered my condolences to the passing of Major Andrew Carter, a U.S. Army officer who took part in this training. I understand it was an accident, so the investigation is still ongoing. Since the end of World War II, the U.S. has been a guarantor of peace and stability in our region, and Thailand is proud to play an important role in achieving this goal. Like many countries in the region, Thailand has benefited a great deal from the U.S. trade and investment, as well as from technical cooperation provided through many U.S. agencies and programs, including countless educational and research institutions. And for that, we are deeply gratified. Now and for the future, Thailand and the U.S. still share the same aspirations in enhancing regional prosperity and ensuring regional stability and security. We stand ready to work with the U.S. in addressing common challenges of today and tomorrow. Global public health, climate and energy crisis, to name a few, and as Melissa Brown has mentioned quite a number as well. We are fully on board. And to guide our relations, signed two important documents, the joint communique reiterating our alliance and partnership. And this will be our guidance and our sort of a roadmap into the future. But also more importantly, the MOU on promoting supply chain resilience, more in a sense that it provides a clear items of what to do in our next phase of our relationship. Both documents are now guiding compass for elevation of our alliance to new heights. And this year presents a great opportunity to translate our aspirations into these in these declarations into tangible progress as well for our people. US is the host of APEC of this year, and there will be 8 ministerial meetings within APEC. I know because I was the spokesperson for the APEC last year, so I expect to have 8 ministers coming from the whatever government would take shape in July and August. So we hope to extend those ministers who come for APEC meetings to extend their into their bilateral discussion or bilateral visits, for example. But before APEC, we also have next year we have several delegations from Thailand already. We have the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Energy who will visit the US to attend the 3rd US-Thailand Energy Policy Dialogue. I'm sure energy security will feature prominently in the dialogue. And just 3 months into this year, we have already many visits. We have the Deputy Attorney General Office. Deputy Attorney General himself visited in January, and his second batch will follow soon. We also have the Thailand Trade Representative that visited San Francisco and Seattle, and he explored and further connect our investment opportunities on the digital companies and on electric vehicles companies as well. And our MFA and Royal Thai Police delegation also visited on the TIP report team, I myself included. We consulted US agencies. And on this note, I also want to share that our new law, Cybercrime Prevention and Suppression, was just passed a few days ago. And this legislation will significantly enhance our capability to fight cybercrime and greatly contribute to our efforts against human trafficking in Thailand and in our neighboring countries. You know, there have been issues of human trafficking across from Thailand and into neighboring countries through cybercrime. So I hope that this law, which is really very timely, will aid us, Thailand and the US, and our partners in the region against human trafficking. We also expect to have visits from Commander-in-Chief and Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Royal Thai Air Force later this year. And also we'll have our second strategic and defense dialogue with MFA and Department Ministry of Defense um, together to discuss our relations and our alliance in more detail. I know that many colleagues, as that Melissa Brown has mentioned, will visit Thailand, and I know and a number of them are still in the region. So our alliance, number one is very much alive, and it's very much vital, with very forward-looking officials working very closely together. My point number two, and I think I'm running out of my time. My point number two is the economic cooperation especially, and I want to stress in the field of sustainable economic cooperation. Our trade and investment have gone from much achieved a lot of growth in the past few years despite COVID. Thailand will continue, and hopefully a stronger manufacturing base for the US, benefiting from supply chain dynamics in the region, and hopefully increasingly high tech, such as in automotive parts and assembly, digital chips and circuit production, and medical devices, just to name a few. And the US hopefully will continue to be our source of technology and innovation for Thailand and the region. Through greater trade and investment and other partnerships, we hope to work even more closely with our US friends and partners on these important endeavors. Our investment ties are moving into more of a two-way manner. In 2022, the US was our third largest investor in Thailand, with more than $1.5 billion US dollars, accounting for over 12% of our total FDI. Amazon Web Services announced a major investment of about $5 billion US dollars in Thailand to expand its cloud computing in Thailand. Google has announced also a similar endeavor in Thailand. We hope through these investments to expand our digital economy, which is about 13% of our GDP of Thailand, to expand even greater degree, and to ensure supply chain resilience. And vice versa, many corporations from Thailand are investing right here in the United States. In fact, in about 27 states, and creating over 60,000 jobs in this country, from Texas to Ohio, from California to Minnesota, ranging from energy, plastics, chemicals, food and beverages, software and IT, auto components, and building materials. A company called Summit is producing parts for Tesla, for example, in the United States as well. Our EEC, Eastern Economic Corridor, is one of our economic priorities for Thailand. Will be a great opportunity for the US companies to strengthen its supply chains. The EEC total investment value has accumulated to more than $55 billion US dollars in the first 5 years, well beyond the target. The US investment account to about $2.2 billion US dollars from companies like Cisco, Intel, AWS, and Mavenir. We're also increasing the numbers of US companies in 5G and smart logistics and BCG related industries. We are working closely with the US to promote sustainability through our EV industry. We are already implementing a comprehensive and most progressive EV ecosystem in the region through the development of top-of-the-line EV and battery manufacturing and charging. The success has been proven by the number of EVs sold in Thailand, over 36,000 units in the past 12 months. The official launch of Tesla sales in Thailand received 7,800 bookings in 1 month's time. That makes us the second highest number in the region, only after China. So, you know, Thai people are really crazy about EVs. and Tesla is not the only makes. We have other brands from other countries as well, including BYD from China that's also announced a major investment, comprehensive investment in EVs production in Thailand. PTT, our energy company, will add 7,000 charging stations in Thailand across the country. Our tuk-tuk manufacturers will change the face of tuk-tuks in Thailand, I think, because face or sound tuk-tuks, because they will make thousands of e-tuk-tuks in the country. So I don't know if they will make manufacture the fabricate sound tuk-tuks or not, but they may become quiet. So the digital economy connection is one of my priorities as well, because we want to work with our U.S. partners in this country to connect the startup innovation ecosystems in the U.S. And I know that there are so many in this country. To some of our few in Thailand, like in Bangkok or in Chiang Mai, we have a few, we have many startups that are ready to scale up, and we will select them, connect them with ecosystems, with VCs, accelerators, incubators right here in the United States. So I have visited Austin, Texas, Houston, Miami, and it seems that everywhere that I went have already very proliferating, ready to go ecosystems in the country. So the opportunities are all abound for those of us watching from Thailand, and I hope to connect with our embassy. At our embassy, we have established, my Ambassador Manasvi before me have established the Global Innovation Club at our embassy for this very purpose, to connect startups and our young MSMEs to the opportunities right here in the United States. We're working with Jula Global Innovation Club and the Startup Association of Thailand. I know they're watching. So we aim to connect them. We're working very hard. Next Monday, we'll have a meeting for them online, just to connect them. And all these exchanges cannot do without person-to-person visits. So the visits of the trade winds, I'm immensely grateful for U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Embassy in Thailand, who are organizing the trade winds to Thailand. We also want to support the Select USA initiative right here in Maryland, Washington, D.C. I have also invited the Chamber of Commerce of Thailand and the Federation of Thai Industries to join Select USA this year. I hope that they will listen to my advice, and we'll have more than a few Thai corporations this year around. I am grateful for what Das Melissa Brown has mentioned about our cooperation in the region. We hope to support U.S. role in development diplomacy, in MUSP, in ACMEX, in even trilateral Thailand and our neighboring countries cooperation. We hope to expand on that. I hope to work closely with our USAID partner and TICA in this regard. And for my last point about the P for participation that John Brendan has mentioned, we have enjoyed close relations throughout the history. And now the first generation of Thai Americans are in their senior years. So I hope to connect through them and through their children as well, the second generation of Thais, and in the United States. I hope to elevate the participation of the Thai American community right here in the United States, to have more their voice heard in the U.S. Political process. And Thai people have been known for their food and culture in this country for a long time. And we will not be remiss if I don't mention about the Thai festivals right here in this country. And there are several of them organized by the Thai American communities themselves. I just came from Florida. They had organized a very big one in Miami with over 10,000 participants, together with many colleagues from many nationalities in Miami area. Minnesota, our small community in Minnesota will work with their counterparts, with their local government, state officials, and other country immigrants groups to organize a Thai festival in St. Paul, Minneapolis area, where they hope to connect to attract 50,000 participants to their festival. For example, the biggest one is in LA, by the way. So maybe some people in my folks from LA is listening. We have the biggest one. We used to have about 200,000 participants to the Thai festival in Los Angeles. But right here in Washington D.C., we are organizing. If my internal process allows, we'll keep our fingers crossed on that with the solution of the House. We will organize a major Thai festival on the National Mall, right in front of the Capitol building. We have reserved space, so hopefully everything goes well, and I hope for your support as well. And we will bring out Muay Thai, hopefully Bo Khao, if you know him, the most prominent Thai Muay Thai boxers, Thai food, Thai fashion, Thai silk, and other Thai delicacies to you right here, joining with the U.S. 4th of July on the 2nd of July. It's a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. I know I'm way over my time. I have just a few more. Just to wrap up, I've been working on the Thai community associations across the country. We hope to elevate some of our community organizations that have the national mandates and functions, such as the Thai American Bar Association, the Nuot Thai Association and Spa of the United States. Nuot is the massage, the Samaki organization, to name a few. The first Congress member that I met was coordinated through one of our Thai local association in California, for example. So the elevation of our community organizations are very important in our work. We have decided to also establish a Thai Restaurant Association to work on the issues that are close to the communities that really matter to the Thai American communities in the United States. I just want to reaffirm Thailand's commitment to the United States. We will have an election free and fair and transparent, and have organized many of them myself abroad. Our elections process go like clockwork. Everything on paper, nothing on digital, and everything can be traced back. So traceability is key as well in our elections. We will organize in-person balloting at our old embassy on Kalorama, where our consular section is, so that hopefully to help energize some of the interests of the Thai nationals in the United States. And we will, of course, organize the by mail ballots with our Thai embassy in Washington, D.C., the consulates in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles as well. But whatever parties come to power, the U.S. will remain Thailand's most important ally. And Thailand will remain pro-market, pro-development, pro-sustainability, and pro-U.S. Thai relations. Geopolitical landscape may change, but friendship remain the same. Thailand will be the friend of the United States, as the U.S. has friends and needs friends all around the world. And Thailand is ready to play a role as a major power in the global South, and our friendship will endure. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you. I'm sorry if I violate the time limit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Tani. As I mentioned in my initial remarks, this is divided into two parts. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Please help yourself to some coffee or refreshment outside, and we'll start up in no later than 10:30, so in about 7 minutes, and we'll begin with our panel discussion. Thank you. Right, yes, you will. Yeah, you will. But yeah. If everyone can please have their seat, we're going to start up again. Thank you. We're now moving to our panel discussion. Our first panelist is Professor Catherine Del Pino. She's a professor emeritus at the Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, where she taught courses in Asian Studies and U.S. foreign policy. She has also taught at a number of other universities, including the State University of New York at Albany, Johns Hopkins SAIS, George Washington University, Simmons College, and Seton Hall University. For 5 years, she was the director of the Thai Studies program at Georgetown. And from 1993 to 1997, she served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy in the State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. She's very familiar to the think tank community, having had fellowships at the Brookings Institution here at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, as well as Georgetown University's Institute for the Study of Diplomacy. Even before that, she was as I mentioned in my opening remarks, Catherine was the Thailand country representative for the Asia Foundation in the late 80s, early 90s. And in that time, she ran not only our Thailand program, but also our programs in Laos and Cambodia. She was also the head of this office and one time my boss. She is a prolific writer. She has written books about 2 books on U.S. foreign policy, but also numerous articles in journals and opinion pieces in newspapers, and has testified to Congress. So with that, Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Before I start, I want to just point out that the Thai Studies program at Georgetown was established and funded by the Royal Thai Embassy at the time. And it served as the basis for the Southeast Asian Studies program at Georgetown. So Georgetown certainly owes the embassy a debt of thanks for that. This is embarrassing because I look around the room and I see so many seasoned and knowledgeable Thai hands that there's no reason that I should be the one to start off with these remarks. So I think it's pretty arbitrary. So I'm just really thrilled and terrified that you're all here with us. I really despise people that get on the podium and start out with personal anecdotes, a very Washington thing to do, but I'm going to do it very briefly. To say, as Das Brown pointed out, her frame of reference was Thailand because it was her first posting in the Foreign Service abroad. And Thailand has been, I have not 1, but 3 frames of reference for Thailand. I was a child in Bangkok in the early 60s. I was a Peace Corps volunteer from 1973 to 1976. And if you know anything about more modern Thai history, you know that both of those years were very, very significant. And then I was, as John pointed out, the Asia Foundation representative from 1987 to 1990 when Thailand had its democratic transition. So all 3 of those periods were very significant in Thai history, but also in U.S.-Thailand relations. And what I'd like to do in these brief remarks is just talk about 2 things. One is the perception in Washington over the past several years, which listening to Ambassador Tani, listening to Das Brown, I'm very relieved to hear is probably going to lift very soon. Perception, hopefully, that the alliance has been in quote unquote drift. That is the adjective or the adjective or whatever that is often attached to it. And then I'd like to talk about some particular areas of cooperation in U.S.-Thailand relations, I think that are very apt for the relationship. And I would just say that in listening to the ambassador and Das Brown's remarks, just the breadth and the depth of the relationship and the finite sets of activities that the 2 countries continue to pursue just are very, very encouraging. But let me talk about the drift. And as the ambassador said, you know, the 2 countries started out their partnership with a common goal, if I can paraphrase it. And this was a 2-pronged goal. One was to avoid entanglements with Europe, Thailand wanting to avoid colonization, and the United States still pursuing that dream of being its own continental power that would stay out of Europe somehow. That proved not to be possible, but that was the goal. And so the two countries were able to help each other in that way to some extent. I mean, it is significant that until World War II, Thailand was the only place where US planes could land in Southeast Asia without having to pay a very large fee, for example. But really, with the Cold War, there was, as we would say in modern vernacular, a reason to push the reset button in a very large way. The United States, by that point in time, had become a global superpower, a reluctant one initially, but then grew into that role. And Thailand put its poker chips on the United States. The alliance grew remarkably. In my personal opinion, I think that bet paid off for Thailand. I think that Thailand was the domino that did not fall in a series. And just why that is would be a very good topic, I think, for a very separate seminar. I would attribute that more to Thailand than to the United States, but I think that the United States certainly did help. But there has been no reason to push the reset button in a big way since then. In contrast to several other Southeast Asian countries. And I will give you some examples. In 1975, with the fall of Saigon, US relations with Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia became warmer, particularly between Washington and Suharto for obvious reasons. They were afraid that this really was going to come down to maritime Southeast Asia. In 1992, when the United States left Subic Bay and Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines, this was a major restart for the US-Singapore security relationship. 1993, when the UN managed elections in Cambodia were completed, the United States had a new relationship with Cambodia. And 1995, and I was in the State Department then and had a tiny little minor participation in the normalization process with Vietnam on the human rights side, but the United States normalized relations with Vietnam. These were major restarts. And there has been no such restart, nor probably no need for one. But it made Thailand somehow recede a little bit more into the background just by default. Some of the reasons for this drift, I would argue, are real, some are imagined, and some, even if they are real, are probably inconsequential. But here's what is on my list. How shall I put this? The United States has proved to be a distracted superpower at times. And I think that we don't quite appreciate the impact of the 1973 Paris peace agreements on Southeast Asia, particularly on our allies, particularly on South Korea and Thailand, and of course, South Vietnam itself. Win Van too was not exactly thrilled with that agreement. But it proved, it was the first real, I think, wake-up call that a global superpower is going to go where the heat is. And the heat was certainly off as far as the United States was concerned with Vietnam. And we have seen this more recently, right after, in the late 1970s, President Carter decided to emphasize Africa over Southeast Asia. And of course, recently in 2016, we had the America First policy, which was a major distraction in many ways. Obviously, the threat environment has changed, in the supposed new Cold War, we're going to see more attention to the maritime Southeast Asian countries because it is going to be a maritime Cold War, at least start as one. And Thailand is not, Thailand's geostrategic position does not put it on the front lines. So we are going to hear a lot more about the US-Philippine alliance because that is where the potential conflict is going to be. Another thing I think, and I think this is oddly symmetrical, is that both countries have in the recent past been a bit distracted by their own internal politics. I would say that Thailand pretty much since 2006 episodically, and the United States since 2016. And this does not mean that neither country can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think both countries are fully capable of conducting a full and competent foreign policy at the time. But politically speaking, we are drawn into other, into our own internal. Thailand is promising a free and fair election. We hope for that too here in the United States in 2024. And, you know, you have the red shirt, yellow shirt, urban warfare. We had January. So you know, it's humbling. Also, I think that, and here I'm going to speak from my former State Department experience, but please, Des Brown, I'm not speaking for the State Department. Human rights and democracy are an irritant in the relationship occasionally. They are in the US, irritant of many US relationships around the world. My former boss, Assistant Secretary Shattuck, used to say that on the day that we released a human rights report, every single country in the world was angry with us. And it was pretty much true. I mean, we would sit there and read the press releases. We angered Sweden, we angered Canada, we angered the UK. And I will tell you afterwards what that was about. It was very embarrassing. So it's a very, very long line of people who are angry with us on the day that the Human Rights Report is released. But I think in the context of US-Thailand relations, here I think you see there was a sea change in US foreign policy in the late 1970s. And so Thailand perhaps could be understood if they said, well, you didn't object to coups in the Cold War. We don't understand why you object to them now, quite frankly. And every time that there is the possibility of one, Washington has to remind Thailand that it is our law that if there is a coup, we have to withhold a certain amount of security assistance, et cetera. But there is something that I think is very hopeful about this issue in US-Thailand relations. And I'm going to speak very frankly, and again, this is my personal opinion only. The United States is not the co-author of Thai democracy. And that is a very strong point, because there are certain countries in which the United States policy community believes it is the co-author of that democracy. Philippines in 1986, our major contribution was withdrawing our support for Ferdinand Marcos, but it was important. There was in Washington a sense of co-authorship with Myanmar in 2012 because the fact that we had so championed Aung San Suu Kyi for 20 years. When I was in government, the paradigm across the policy community in and out of government, and it was very bipartisan, was that it was possible externally almost, if not to engineer, then to greatly encourage democracy in other countries. There was a very European model of that, I will say. It based pretty much on Václav Havel. You find a dissident, you champion him, he becomes prime minister or president, and that's actually not usually how democracy comes to countries. And the Václav Havel model didn't really work very well. It didn't work very well in Poland when we championed Lech Walesa and he became president. And what do you know, there he is, sort of authoritarian. But United States did not. I was actually in Thailand as the Asia Foundation representative in 1988. And although we encouraged free and fair elections, we encouraged human rights, when that actually happened, the United States was a little bit irritated because what it actually did at the time was when Prime Minister Prem dissolved Parliament in 1988 and they had the first elections, he dissolved Parliament because the government coalition rebelled against the bill to protect American copyrights. And that was what brought the Thai Parliament down in 1988 and gave way to elections. So the next day, people were walking around saying, well, yeah, we think democracy is great, but we wanted our copyrights too, which simply shows the difficulty between an ideological foreign policy and a very pragmatic one as well. But I think that is good, because if you don't feel that you are the co-author of a country's democracy, then that is going to evolve, and all democracies evolve in a much more natural way. And I actually think that's a strength in the US-Thailand relationship. A couple of other reasons why I think the alliance has been in drift. One is that, and I think although I think Senator Duckworth is a wonderful example of the Thai American community in the United States. And this is actually a positive, but the Thai American community does not have a major dog in US political fight, which is good. I mean, we've had Southeast Asian communities, certainly the Vietnamese American community has been very vocal on US policy towards Vietnam. The Hmong community in Laos, from Laos, was very vocal. The Philippine American community was very vocal in the 1980s about Marcos. And the Thai American community doesn't really have major issues, which is a very good thing. but I have sometimes heard Thai diplomats say that we'd like more attention from Congress. Well, be careful of what you wish for. Because if you get it, it's usually not for a good reason. But anyway, I digress. So I think none of these are particularly deal breakers at all, but I think that they just perhaps are a little bit of an autopsy of the relationship for the past 10 or 20 years, which I think certainly is, as the ambassador says, constantly evolving. Let me just finish with some thoughts about where I think possibilities for cooperation are particularly strong in U.S.-Thailand relations. The United States and Thailand are very good in cooperating on transnational security threats and non-traditional security threats. In the 1980s, that cooperation pretty much stopped the flow of heroin coming down from the Golden Triangle through Thailand. Of course, what happened is the heroin then went out through China, but at least it did show that the United States and Thailand could work effectively in this way. There's desperate need around the world for greater cooperation on the environment. And I know from vast experience that the Thai NGO community, the environmental community is strongest on mainland Southeast Asia, certainly. I think that the US-Mekong partnership could go much farther. I think it's a very good vehicle, and what the United States and Thailand can make of it, I think is very important, because if you look at the membership of the US-Mekong partnership, it's going to come down to the United States and Thailand, frankly, within mainland Southeast Asia. I cannot say enough, and this is related to the environment, for cooperation on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And here I have a particular hobby horse in this, which is that the 2004 tsunami, which was of course very tragic, nevertheless was a very good example of how the United States and Thailand can cooperate at times like this. The United States asked if they could use Utapao for 1 month as a regional hub. Remember, Ambassador Boyce said, we will leave in 1 month. We promise you 1 month. And they did, they left in 1 month. And because the airports in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur were overwhelmed with disaster relief. And also, if you remember at the time, Indonesia would not let people go on shore from their ships to Aceh. And so Thailand was the obvious regional hub. After that, there was an episodic discussion between the two governments, the Thai and American governments, about using Utapao as a more permanent regional hub for disaster relief. And it went back and forth. And I was in Bangkok, I think perhaps it was 2012, I'm not sure. And the US chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was in Thailand, and he called upon his counterpart of the Supreme Command. And he said casually to the press, well, I think it's time to work together to make Utapao a regional hub. And the headlines in the Thai newspapers were this big and said in red letters, Americans want boots on the ground in Utapao again. And I remember calling up the DG of the Americas in ministry and saying, wasn't this your idea too? And they said, yes. I think that the Thai government might make a case to the Thai people for this. This is not boots on the ground a la Vietnam War. This is for a very, very good reason that Thailand would benefit too. I think there's a lot of potential there. I think also that Cobra Gold is always a very, very excellent base from which to promote multilateral security in the Asia Pacific region. And I think that has long been a goal in principle between the United States and Thailand. I think more could be done. And you have to think, you know, I mean, in the new Cold War, which is very China-centric, imagine that China and Thailand co-hosted multilateral exercises on an annual basis of the scope that Cobra Gold is. You would have people in Washington screaming that China had invaded. I mean, it really is remarkable. It doesn't get a lot of attention because it's been ongoing for such a long time. Lastly, and this is difficult, but I think that the region could benefit from some very frank discussion about Myanmar. Thailand is a frontline state. Personally, I'm not an expert in Myanmar. I think the assumption in Washington is this is just going back to 1990 or 2010 or 2012, pick your route. I don't think that's it. I think this is something worse and something new. And I think that there needs to be some discussions about how this can be handled. You know, and I think that both countries need to listen to each other, but I think that particularly we need to listen to a front-on state, because I don't think that we can just simply roll back the clock and get things back on track. And certainly the United States is not quite here. We go back to being distracted, but it's a little bit difficult. I mean, when I was in the State Department, our policy was to support Aung San Suu Kyi, get her out of jail, and everything will fall from them. That was what we used to call around the world dissident poker. You have a dissident, he's in jail, you get them out of jail, everything will be fine. Chances are the dissident will be back in jail 4 or 5 months later. This is a new game in Myanmar. I think it's a more serious one, and I think some serious discussion between the United States and Thailand on this would be very beneficial. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Catherine. We'll go now to retired Colonel Larry Redmond. He was the former U.S. military attaché, and he's now a consultant for Thai American Security Affairs. He served in the military for 43 years, and 22 of those years were overseas with multiple tours in Thailand as a Special Forces advisor, and he was a special advisor to the Royal Thai Army Commander-in-Chief for a period of time. And he was for 6.5 years the Army attaché in Bangkok. He's also served in India and Europe and the Middle East, as well as Indo-PACOM theater. He is when he was at DOD, he was the country director and acting director for Southeast Asia in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Asia Pacific Security Affairs. And as I said, he's now currently a private consultant working on. So Larry, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should also protest following Catherine is a hard act to follow, and she covered a lot of salient points that I won't cover, but it definitely helps me present some ideas on the mill-to-mill relationship. So, and she actually said something very interesting I hadn't thought about too. So that was interesting. Thank you, Catherine. And thank you, John, and the Asia Foundation. And it's a pleasure to be here with like-minded individuals who love, or have a fascination with Thailand. My personal story is I started there as a young Special Forces soldier in the 1980s when there was still some nascent insurgency going on, conducting foreign internal defense missions. And fate has taken me back there many, many times as an exchange officer, kind of reverse IMET. I was in their system there and stayed a little bit longer. And I met my beautiful wife, who's sitting here with me today, Nantaluk, who's been a blessing and really helps me learn more about her country. And so today I'd really kind of like to talk a little bit more about the mill-to-mill and why I think it's important, and I hope to convince you why it's important. A lot of things were touched upon, but even though we have, and I have to thank my good friend, Ambassador Tani. I can't forget you, sir. So it's good to see him back here in Washington. Even though we're at 190 years relationship, the mill-to-mill relationship probably didn't really start on Earth until the Second World War, has been alluded to, with the support for the Free Thai movement by the Office of Strategic Services and Detachment 101 and 404 specifically, which my regiment traces its lineage to, and really is kind of why I had beginning fascinations with Thailand. And after that, while Bill Donovan became the ambassador, we started doing a lot of nowadays what we call foreign internal defense, building up the military to a modern military post occupation by the Japanese. And as Catherine mentioned, to keep from colonization, but also I would add that, it was a place for us to go, aircraft. It still is a place for us to go with aircraft because the Pacific is so large. And also the spread of communism throughout the region as it became apparent, much later, a little bit later. So that really kind of started it. So after World War II, and not really trying to give you a history lesson, but just a little foundation here. Post World War II, we really started an ambitious program of modernization in the military. And even though we think of exercises, shooting, soldiers, boots on the ground, there's a lot of things that happen that even if you go today, you will find the benefits to the Thai people. For example, if you go to the Friendship Highway between Karat and Pak Chong, at the beginning of that highway, you will find a monument to the U.S. Army engineers that built that highway. And they provided a lot of infrastructure to get help into rural areas, and also the government into rural areas where they hadn't been seen before. They dug wells, they built hospitals, and ran power lines and railroad track. So mill-to-mill relationship in that period had a lot to do with that as well. And I think that's very important to remember, especially when we talk about Cobra Gold, because we still do some of those things. We don't lay railroad track, but we do build some schools and small hospitals, and we do dig wells. And there is a lot of projects in rural areas. And that is very much a very important part of Cobra Gold in particular, as we do it as a multilateral event, and we bring other nations and show them what we can do and demonstrate openness and peacefulness as part of our military engagement. Also, post-World War II, I think it's important to pay homage to the 21st Infantry Regiment as Korea became troublesome and the conflict ensued. Thailand did send an infantry regiment, the Queen's Cobras, and they fought very bravely and received the Presidential Citation. They were at Pork Chop Hill, and that commander received the U.S. Silver Star. And so I think that was a very worthy effort of a small country that was coming out of occupation, the Second World War, to be able to do that and support the United States in the UN. Very quickly, what I call the Vietnam era was probably started in the late 50s, again, where we were looking to stop communism, the domino effect, and the U.S. military started a very robust program, even more so, of training the Royal Thai Armed Forces. My own unit was in there in 1954, establishing airborne, ranger, and special forces organizations in Lopburi. Later on, there was U.S. was staging with the Thais into Laos during their Civil War, White Star, and then that went all the way into the 60s. And we had about, my unit alone had about 900 troops there. Of course, you know, we had the air bases there. We were conducting combat operations. We also launched the Son Tay raid from Thailand. A lot of people don't know, where it was the ill-fated rescue attempt, again, American POWs out of Vietnam. And incidentally enough, the longest held POW in Vietnam was a Thai soldier. And that was Colonel Chai Charan Harnavi, a very good friend of our families, who passed away a few years ago. Received the Silver Star and the Legion of Merit. He was a sergeant when he was captured with an American pilot, Ernest Brace, who was actually a Marine, succumbed to the agency, flying for Air America. During our efforts when Special Forces was training free Thais into the Laotian Civil War, excuse me, not free Thai, but volunteer Thais in the Laotian Civil War. That effort also resulted in an entire division of Thai soldiers going into Vietnam, who also fought very bravely with us. So there had been a commitment there, and that commitment continues. And again, it was more than just exercises, more than what you think in the traditional movie sense of mill-to-mill engagement would be, but there was still a lot of infrastructure development. And if you talk to those veterans, many of them still sponsor the orphanages where they were located at, you know, some 50, 60 years later. It's quite amazing. Yeah, and so from that time now, there probably was a lull because we left in 74, I think for the most part. My unit left in 74. And by the way, I'm not that old. I was not there at that point, so I just want to make that clear. Is that it probably didn't really start up again in earnest till about 1984. I think 1984 was the first year we reestablished Cobra Gold. And I went back in early 80s. I went early 86 for the first time, I should say, not back. When First Group was part of that effort to reestablish contacts with the Special Forces community over there and longtime friends. And that was very successful. And of course, it's been getting better every year. And even during COVIDs, we did not cancel Cobra Gold. It was very much downscaled, but we still kept the name and the exercise. And so Cobra Gold is extremely important. And what was alluded to, the tsunami, it allowed us to fall in place on part of the Cobra Gold infrastructure to effectively conduct relief option with the tsunami. Also during that time, Thailand stood up to the plate when we needed them to, and participate in the Australian-led East Timor effort. That was a significant feather in the cap for Thailand, if you ask me, in the region. They did need U.S. lift support, but by and large, the Royal Thai Air Force were able to fly their own aircraft in a ship and get their forces to East Timor. And they eventually led that effort, took it over from the Australians. And no other country stepped up to the plate in the region to do that. Later on, General Nepot, good friend of our families, led the effort to conduct peace negotiations in Aceh. I think that's incredible. We kind of forget those things, but they are able to do those things. Yes, they do need some help. And as I go on at the end, I will mention a couple of things I think that we should look at in the 21st century is look for a relationship. But to fast forward to the global war on terrorism, Thailand was the first Asian nation to commit troops to Afghanistan and Iraq. A lot of people don't know that. They practically rebuilt the airfield at Kandahar. They sent an engineering medical task force. They lost soldiers and they continued the effort. It was not a popular decision in Thailand to send troops to the global war on terrorism. But they did. And they stayed or agreed to rotations. And the fact that they stayed even after they lost soldiers, I think was actually very, very remarkable. I was there during the time, and I remember when that happened, and we did not think that they would continue their rotation, but they did. And so the reset, fast forward to the reset. So after that, non-NATO member exercises, there was a couple coups there. We withdrew some security assistance. We continued with Cobra Gold, which I think is very important to remember. We did not cancel Cobra Gold during those times either. And then I think we'll fast forward to the reset, since we've talked about it a couple of times real quick, is about 2019, 2020. And a lot of people don't like to call it the reset, but that's what most people are calling it. So we on the DoD side actually were at fault of trying to figure out what we were going to do for the reset. What was the alliance going to look like those 2 years, let alone the 21st century? Certainly access and influence is still the key strategic objective that we want, but we don't truly understand on the Thai side what their strategic objectives are. We think we do, but then when we try to discuss it, we don't. And then we ourselves really don't know what it is beyond that. But I will suggest a couple of things. If we look at what happened in 2019, 2020, it was really about a relationship between two men, General Robert Brown, the USARPAC commander, and also General Apirat Krongsompong, the commander-in-chief at the time. Both men had a vision. General Apirat realized that the Thai military could not operate seamlessly, interoperability with the military as much as we like to say we did. They were still operating Korean War, and Vietnam War vintage equipment for the most part, and doctrine. And the US had gone leaps and bounds through Afghanistan and Iraq War with our Stryker Brigade Combat Team concept. And that really changed a lot. They couldn't keep up. They didn't have the equipment, and the education and those kind of things were lacking. Both men realized that was a problem, and they tackled that problem. And so the biggest reset was that relationship with those two guys and the introduction of Strykers to the Royal Thai Armed Forces. That was the first time the US sold Strykers to any country in the world, and Thailand bought those, and we also granted some. That also resulted in a small nation like Thailand, the first Southeast Asian country, to send their forces to the Joint Readiness Training Center. That is a world premier class training event that is the envy of most of the world to get into. That one and in the NTC California. Thailand has sent 2, maybe 3 rotations now. I oversaw 2 rotations, and they perform magnificently, frankly. Not perfectly, but for the first time, they did better than most units. That relationship has grown, and now you have one of the best bilateral exercises with Thailand. That's Hanuman Guardian. That exercise right there incorporates all the things that Cobra Gold does on a bilateral basis, but it also gives them some capacity and some use with experienced people in the US Army to operate those Strykers and the doctrine. But with that said, that's really just 2 battalions out of about 12 divisions. So I think that as we look at the 21st century, one of the best things we can do is continue to support that program. Because if we really want to keep Thailand as a treaty partner and an alliance partner, we have to help them modernize their armed forces. And with modernization, we can create some other avenues. And one of the things I think we could do is we talked a lot about business investment, Ambassador, but defense industry. Thailand's defense industry is very small, and they're still reliant on a lot of countries to get things. And if we want them to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, we could help them with their defense industry. Are they going to build M1 tanks one day? I don't think so. But there's a lot of things that can be done, from cyber, communications, unmanned aerial vehicles, intelligence, and so on and so forth. Another thing is education. IMET in education, to me, is one of the most important strategic tools that the U.S. has. And to show you how influential it is, the U.S. Army Command General Staff College. Now, I'm an Army officer, so I'm always talking about Army schools because it's what I'm most familiar with. But 4 prime ministers graduated from that school. No other country in the world can say that about that course. General Surya was the honor graduate at that school. West Point. We've had 4-star generals and chiefs of defense graduate West Point. We've had over 300 general officers graduate the Royal Thai Army Command, the U.S. Army Command General Staff College. And I think the last count was about 43 ministers at some level. Those individuals who eventually graduate those schools will become senior leaders in government and in the military. And even in our worst of times, we're able to call those people and say, hey, help us out. Can you talk to somebody? Can you arrange a meeting? So, IMET is extremely important in the military. And I would hope someday there'd be IMET for State Department people, for MFA people, and for other government agencies, because it's an incredible tool that we shouldn't stop when we're angry with our friends. But it has been very, very important. I mentioned earlier, I was kind of reverse IMET. I went to the staff college over there. So I think maybe I'm one of those guys that you can reach out to occasionally, if you need somebody to talk about the importance of relationships. So I think it's very beneficial, and it certainly helped me with my job over there. Supporting English language and cultural engagement in all institutions over there. The other countries, frankly, the Chinese with their Confucius centers do a very good job. It's commendable, frankly. I don't even think we have a cultural center in Bangkok anymore. And also investing into all the educational and institutional systems on the defense side in Thailand. There are a few think tanks. They're not as big or as well known as ours, but we don't engage them. We don't engage the Ministry of Defense very well. We need to invest in that. And that's through exchanges, instructors, stationing people over there, inviting them to come here, so on and so forth. I would also argue that if Thailand remains a treaty alliance, we need to invite them as observers, or maybe as actual participants in some of these increasing new organizations that we're creating in Indo-PACOM, with Australia and Japan and Korea and so forth like that. We need to get them involved. I would also support them in ASEAN. Thailand is now looked at as a place to go for defense professionalism by other ASEAN countries, and they support ASEAN countries coming to Thailand. We should encourage that. We should help them whenever they need it. Leading troop contributing nation, help them and support them in that, because that just brings them in as a regional player that really has the capacity to be a regional player, and gives them more prestige. I don't want to say power, but I think you understand my point on that. HADR, there are a few countries that does it better than Thailand. When I went to East Timor with them, how the Thai people connected with East Timorese and conducted HADR was incredible. And I'd also say the same thing of tsunami. I was the operations officer just mag when we had the tsunami. And frankly, we did very little in Thailand when it came to tsunami relief. The Thai engineers already were out there. We came in late, and we gave some plastic bags, some pallets, and some MREs in Thailand. Now we used Utapao for the rest of the region, but in Thailand, the Royal Thai Army took the lead, and they came to us, asked us for deep water pumps that can pump salt water, which the Bechtel Corporation donated. And that was about it, to be honest with you. And we brought in some experts to show them how to palletize instead of floor load aircraft. But they did an incredible job. They were very well organized, very well suited to do it. And that's the forte, because as the Thai Army looks internally at what they do a lot of that in their country anyway. So I would definitely support that. And the idea. Okay, so I'll leave it there for any questions, but I think that gives you a good enough ideas. It's important, but I think the opportunity is there for 21st century if we just take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Our last speaker, who's been very patient, is Dr. Pongpisut Busbarat. He's an assistant dean and assistant professor at the Department of International Relations in the Faculty of Political Science at Chulalongkorn University. And since the beginning of January, he's the director of the Institute for Security and International Studies in Thailand, also at Chulalongkorn. He holds a PhD in political science and international relations from Australian National University, with postgraduate degrees from Columbia University and Cambridge. His research interests include great power competition in Southeast Asia, Thailand's foreign policy, and norms and identity in international relations. His most recent publication is China and Mekong Regionalism, a reappraisal of the formation of Lancang-Mekong cooperation in Asian politics and policy. So with that, Paul, you've been very patient. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to your remarks.
Thank you, John. Good morning and good evening from Thailand. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to the Asia Foundations and the Thai Embassy for inviting me to join all of you on these special occasions to commemorate the 190th anniversary of the Thai-US relations. So as we reflect, on our past accomplishments, we also look towards the future and consider ways to improve our relationships further. So I won't delve into history much because our two panelists already touched upon, but I will try to give ideas how we can consolidate our ties in a number of directions and areas. So from my perspective, first, we both need to recognize that history and memories matters, especially the bad ones, right? So we have seen the impacts of history and memories throughout our political tensions, especially since the post-Cold War, the Asia financial crisis in 1997, the coup in 2014. Throughout these major tensions in Thai-US foreign relations, we can observe that Thai policy elites always complained about the US in two narratives. First, US did not understand Thailand enough, right? And then the second one, the US does not treat Thailand as a special friend. Even though we have a bilateral security alliance and Thailand's cooperated with the United States during the Cold War. So these disappointments caused ruptures in our friendships and relationships. So in theory, what we can do is that the US has to recognize this political psychology of the Thai counterparts and take it seriously. Security alliance is seen in different vein, right, from the Thai perspective. While the US may look at the security alliance through the defense and military lens, where common interests in security areas are the core, so this should not be linked with or to any other non-security issues. But the Thai look at the alliance from a broader perspective, where the core is security one, and other aspects of relations, grow from it. So the relationship between security and non-security interests are symbiotic. So they are connected, and deteriorations in one area could affect others. So at the same time, the Thai counterpart also have to consider the different psychology of the United States as well. Right? The bigger power, US has different priorities in the world, and Thailand can be off, US radar from time to time. US has its own domestic audiences, most of the time not necessarily cater to Thai benefits, right? So, but instead, Thailand has to make itself more important for the US priority as well. And how, right? Thailand, especially its political elites, must embrace democracies and human rights principle. That means military intervention must be avoided at all costs in the future. Democratic means of political transitions has to be institutionalized and accepted as the only game in town. As Thailand will have a general elections in May, meaning procedural democracy continues, right? But we still have greater challenges to substantiate democratic values in political system and societies. So one of the ways to improve this is through supporting human rights in the kingdom. The country, Thailand, must have to realize that making progress in this area will help the countries. Respect of human rights will empower its own societies as a whole. Thailand will be recognized and respected by international communities. So importantly, it will help solve trade conflict. Thailand often faces with its own major market, especially the United States and EU. So at the same time, US need to be patient, with slow progress. From time to time, it felt, that is very common for the young democracy. So, and by doing so, I mean, like by adherence to democracy and human rights, Thailand will demonstrate, right, that Thailand share this value with the US counterpart and is open to suggestions as friends would do to each other. So therefore, adherence to democracy and its value will help reinvigorate and consolidate US-Thai relations in the long run. The third area where both nations should increase cooperation is security, regional security. Thailand, United States have shared interest in maintaining peace and security in Southeast Asia. So it's a good milestone that we see Thai-US strategic and defense dialogue started last year. And this is a great platform to talk and start conversations in a deeper manner. Our nations can collaborate in many common areas, especially in non-traditional security, counterterrorism, maritime security, cybersecurity, or human security. That's important issues, especially in the Mekong sub-regions. However, considering the growing tension between the US and China, it's more difficult for small nations like Thailand to balance its foreign policies many times. Thailand shares with ASEAN fellow that we do not want to choose sides, as doing so will only destabilize regional stabilities and prosperity. We want to see more dialogue and talk, between two great powers. So therefore, any security cooperation with United States and Thailand should not leave the impression that the United States is trying to push Thailand to choose, between the two great powers. And building upon the spirit of ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific AOIP will help ameliorate such concerns. So synergizing AOIP and FOIP will help clarify common areas of interest that are mutually beneficial: maritime cooperations, connectivities, sustainable development, and economic affairs. For the United States and Thailand, both can work on synergizing their plan on the Mekong sub-regions. This is also the key area where Thailand is interested in, right? So we can do this through close coordinations between the ACMEC and Mekong-US partnership, especially in human security issues. Within the Mekong sub-regions, Myanmar issue, right, will be with us for quite some time. And as we all know, Thailand is the frontline state to face hundreds of thousands of refugees from Burma. So our immediate task is how to manage this influx of refugees and provide proper assistance to them. So it's cost a lot of money and support from external stakeholders, including the United States, necessary. The US can utilize Thailand's close tie with the Kathmandu at certain level to persuade them to allow international aid and humanitarian assistance. So pressures from international community should also continue, not that we have to abandon that directions, at least, in the immediate and short-term futures to make the junta implement ASEAN's 5-point consensus in the more sustainable manners. That's a very important point I have to make at this time. So the fourth area that we have to strengthen is economic ties, right? The United States and Thailand have long been important trading partners with bilateral totaling around like 70 million in 2022. So however, there's a very large room for growth, particularly in the area of renewable energy, digital trade, SME, logistic and supply chains. US should encourage its business to invest in Thailand further, as growing American economic role in the kingdom will provide more options, or the alternative for Thailand to other emerging economic partners, especially China, right? So stronger economic ties will improve strategic positions of the United States in Thailand, right? In the Pacific Economic Framework or IPEF, it could be a good venue to improve opportunities to reinvigorate Thai-US economic partnership. But what we need is also continuity and certainty, and certainly, of US commitment to pursue this initiative in the long run. So last but not least, promote people-to-people exchange. So people-to-people exchange is the foundation of our relationship. It should be encouraged and continue, whether it be tourism, educational, cultural exchanges, civil society support. Lately I have had a regular contact with the public affairs sections in the US Embassy in Thailand and bringing students to hear from US diplomats about US foreign policy, societies, and value. So I think, the public affair of the US Embassy in Thailand is very active, and this kind of activity should expand throughout the countries through American consulate and American corners in Thailand's regions. So I also think these dimensions of cooperation will last long and surpass all political tensions that might emerge in the future. So considering the changing socio-economic structures in Thai society, US can play more constructive role in this development to ensure our cooperation in the future will even more mature and stronger, So in conclusion, the 190th anniversary of the Thai-US relations is a significant milestone, right? That remind us of the strong ties between our nations. While we have achieved much over the past 2 centuries, there is still much work to be done, in the next perhaps century too, right? But the most important factors that will help promote bilateral relationships is US policy consistency, to Thailand and to this region. Consistency help continue whatever work and activity we may do in the futures, or the current stage into the future. So significantly, it will reduce concerns of Thailand being marginalized or distanced, hence turning to other power for help or for assistance. So let me stop here because we are over time for quite some time, and we can discuss further in particular issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pongpisut. We have had a very rich discussion for almost the last 2 hours, where we've heard a lot about the historical legacy of 190 years of bilateral relations. At the same time, we've learned that the working relationship pretty much throughout has always been solid. But yet there are hiccups, such as Professor Pongpisut mentioned about the Asian financial crisis, coups, other matters, how to deal with Myanmar. And so with that, let me turn to all of you for any questions or comments that you might have. If you could identify yourself, your institutional affiliation, and also if you can tell us who you're directing the question to. In the interest of time, maybe if it's just directed to one person, and we'll see if others want to briefly comment. So the floor is open. If you could kindly raise your hand. There any, sorry.
On, okay. So, yeah, my name is Prashant with the Wilson Center. Just a quick question for the panel. So I think one consistent theme I picked up on all of the remarks was a sense of, perhaps a focus on the security component, but there's so many other domains that US and Thailand cooperate actually well on, or there's actually a lot of promise. So whether it's people to people, economics, I'm wondering if, I know this is primarily about the US-Thailand alliance, but just as a sense of which other actors perhaps are
Lean
doing a
more
better.
into the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Just wanted to get a sense of, if we're thinking about this more comprehensively, what other actors are maybe doing a better job other than the United States? If we remove the United States from the equation, and just look at Thailand. What are some actors that are actually doing a better job of working with Thailand in some of these specific areas? So if it's economics, for example, that Ambassador Tani talked about, or people-to-people ties or military-to-military ties, are there individual countries that are actually leveraging this relationship in more creative ways perhaps than we're doing and might offer us some models, even though we have a different system?
You have it directed towards any particular person? Okay.
Let me just make two comments. I can't answer it comprehensively, and I'm not sure I want to say that country X is doing a better job than country Y. I think increasingly we're going to have to look at whether government to government is the best way to promote cultural exchange. I do note that American centers have given way to American corners. That's probably says, and particularly with the internet, particularly, and this is happening all over the world. I mean, cultural exchange, a lot of used to be government to government. If you look at philanthropy and where it's going, even in Europe, it's very different. Second of all, this gets us back to trade, and it gets us back to free trade, things like that. I have no idea what's going on with IPEF. I don't know anybody who has any idea of what's going on with IPEF. Presumably we'll find out soon. But there was an attempt to negotiate a free trade agreement, which was kind of euthanized in 2006. The ostensible reason was because of the coup. I think that was the excuse to euthanize the. And yet I think Ambassador Thailand is beginning to resume talks with EU about, right, okay. I think this is a problem with the United States. I doubt that any American in this room would disagree that the United States is not going to suddenly burst into negotiation of free trade agreements multilaterally. This is just a fact. But how are we going to square that circle? I've always said, and that one day we are going to wake up and find out that there is an ASEAN-EU FTA, which the EU will have negotiated incrementally, country by country, and we will wonder how that happened. So.
But I think your question was more broadly about how other countries may be doing things that are better or different than the United States, and not only about the FTA, although I have a few things to say about trade as well, because trade, features very prominently. It's a huge part of our GDP, and I would advocate that the United States utilizes its huge market as one of the most important leverages that it has on many friends and countries around the world. Things like GSP programs, for example, which now has like 5% of Thailand's trade with the US, because our trade has grown leaps and bounds, even despite the COVID. I think play an important role in not only for Thailand, but for other many developing countries. We have had RCEP, have joined already altogether ASEAN +6 or 5 -1, if I'm not mistaken. That's an important leverage as well for us and for all the partners. But talking about other countries more broadly, other than trade, I would venture to say that other regional countries in Asia have been very active in promoting their relationship, and not only through official means, but also through people-to-people relationship, their soft power, their entertainment, from the Northeast Asia, are very prominent in Southeast Asia, and we enjoy each other means of communication. So all these things, not only the US, but the US is still one of the most important actors and players in the region by far. So I would not dismiss the United States right out. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Richard Cronin from the Stimson Center. I'm Ambassador, and I know each other very well over the years. But I have a question, Ambassador Tani, and also I think Professor Pontus mentioned the issue of supply chains. And Thailand has a very deep, as you mentioned, industrial base, and also long played a very important role in electronics globally, manufacturing and other aspects. But these days, I've been looking at semiconductors as an issue, and I noticed that we keep hearing more about Vietnam as a likely location for moving production and other activities from China to Southeast Asia. I don't hear much about Thailand, and that's a little bit of a puzzle for me, because Vietnam is much less industrialized and has much less experience in high tech, et cetera. And so I wonder if you could say a bit about why we hear more about Vietnam, and also what Thailand could be doing or should be doing to get into the game.
Sure. Thank you for your question, Dr. Cronin. Vietnam is, I think, in a phase where Thailand was perhaps in the 1980s, when we had the jump from our economic growth and industrial development at that time. Vietnam is a younger country, very much by population, and have enjoyed high economic growth over the past several years. Very stable political environment inside the country. But every country has its own, opportunities and challenges. Thailand has challenges as well. We have always had our fair share of attention by the private sector. Western Digital has a strong presence in Thailand for decades. Companies like Analog Devices are still with us and expanding as well. And I mentioned a few others during my remarks. Thailand is probably #1 EV production center in Southeast Asia, and we are transitioning in an unprecedented term from gasoline, traditional, conventional electric vehicles to electric vehicle production. When we have I think the most attractive incentives for EV production in Thailand. We are constructing, as we speak, high-speed train from Bangkok, Korat. Larry mentioned about the Friendship highway that we mentioned. Now we are adding on to our traditional train lines to high-speed train lines through Vientiane to connect with the high-speed train from China. We also having similar projects with Japanese support investment from Bangkok to Chiang Mai and Bangkok down south to connect with Malaysia as well. So all these things that are going on maybe have escaped the attention of the press, but we have our fair share of our investment, and the economic growth is not where we would like it to be, but I hope that with many infrastructure in place, we will attract more attention from the press. We have some of the most elaborate electric train systems in the region, by the way. If you have not visited Thailand recently, please come and enjoy our BTS, subway. We are linking, as we speak, the 3 airports, Don Mueang, Suvarnabhumi, and Utapao, with high-speed train as well. Construction is underway. The link to Laos will be finished in 5 years. So a lot of investors and exporters are looking at these infrastructure that have already been in place. So that's the latest as far as I know. I don't want to take too much time. Thank you.
Pongpisa, would you like to add anything?
Yes, perhaps like we have to think about Vietnam jumping into economic development quite later than Thailand. So we already have like the old traditional manufacturing, base, like since 1980s, 70s, 80s. And then, later on, like if you think about the populations in Vietnam, right, the working populations is very vibrant, and the birth rate is like, much higher than Thailand. So that could, add up to the growing, markets in Vietnam as well. Plus, still, Vietnam still has a lower cost of production, so that would be attractive to foreign investment, especially when you think about the in Thailand, as I mentioned, since 1970s, 1980s, when we received the previous generations of manufacturing industry. So that's continue to play important roles in Thailand, and even though in the world economy where we emphasize in digital economy industries, but I think Thai industries are quite take it quite slowly in the transitions of these industrializations into the digital economies. We still have a lot of time, we still have hard time adjusting and turning the existing industrial infrastructures, from the old period into the new period, when Vietnamese, they perhaps receive new infrastructures and new investment in this kind of digital industries from especially from Korea, and that would help them develop quite fast in this the past decade. So when compared to Thailand, we still stuck with this old manufacturing productions. So that's quite a big adjustment that we have to move on. So I think that's why we don't really see that much progress and any mentions about the potentials of Thai digital industries in the news or in the media. So Vietnam's kind of be more attractive in Southeast Asia these days.
Just to add to that, this is where the Myanmar situation comes in also, because a lot of Western investors in Thailand, including the United States and especially Japan, had developed a kind of Thailand +1 strategy, where they would maintain factories in Thailand, but also perhaps look to Myanmar in the midterm. That scenario is offline now. So, and Vietnam does not have endless capacity to absorb all of this investments being redirected from China.
Park, if you can introduce yourself. We'll go for one last question and then we'll wrap up.
I'm Park Bunuch. I'm a congressional fellow working on the Hill under the support of the Asia Foundation. My questions regarding the Thailand's and US relations in the 21st century, vis-a-vis the rise of China and China's increasing assertiveness in the region. The US strategic rebalancing towards Asia during the Biden administration has been closely watched by the international community. Such move inevitably pit Washington against Beijing from its two-track policy, engaging and at the same time contending And either way, it underlies the US growing concern over how best to deal with the rise of China. But although the US antagonism towards China is by no means evident at this point in time, but a series of political tensions in Southeast Asia, reaffirming that Asia and East Asia is now increasingly divisive. The US might have successfully avoided direct confrontation with China, but some countries in the region and also regional bloc and cooperation like the AUKUS, the Quad, the Five Eyes, reaffirming that China is increasingly assertive in the region. And my question is, how do you assess future cooperation between Thailand and the US vis-a-vis China rise in the region? And also, what do you expect to see from Thailand's amidst regional competition? Thank you. To Professor Catherine and maybe Colonel Raleigh.
We have an expression in Washington, where you sit is where you stand. And the answer to your question is it depends on where the China threat is coming from. And I think there are two scenarios that might put US-Thailand relations, or at least the alliance, to the test. One is that, and these are hypothetical, one is that China does indeed have control of Ream Naval Base in Cambodia and suddenly has a new presence on the Gulf of Thailand. And how is Thailand going to be happy with that? But I think the larger scenario, and you cannot walk around this city without hearing this 5 times a day, is what happens if China invades Taiwan. And clearly, I mean, President Marcos, to his credit, seems to be very forward-leaning about this, to the surprise of many. But what will happen if the United States, and let me say that I am by no means convinced that the United States response is going to be automatic or can be even foretold at this point. I'm a little bit skeptical about that, but I'll set that aside. What will happen if Washington says to Bangkok, we want to use your bases for refueling, we want to, you know, in the context of our alliance, what will Bangkok's response be?
Yeah, on the DoD side, we're keenly aware that even normal use of UTAPAO now gets questions by the Chinese. So it's more difficult for the Thais to demonstrate support for us because they get a lot of pushback from the Chinese. Counterproliferation, maritime security is also another example. And we're also sensitive to the Chinese doing more exercises because the Thais have a lot of US equipment. So we don't want them to see that equipment. But however, we still message that we are okay with a responsible China's rise, and as long as they're open and transparent. So this year we included the Chinese for the first time in Cobra Gold. So that was pretty significant because we've always pushed back on that. So we do try to understand the Thais perspective, but sometimes we don't think that the Thais take serious the alliance when it comes to that. We don't truly understand how they view the threat. I don't think, my impression was on the Thai military side is there was not a real belief that China was a military threat to Thailand at this point.
Pongpisa, would you like to add to this? You couldn't hear? I can't hear you.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, yes, we can.
I think I lost like a couple of seconds at the end.
Well, basically, the question was how is you know, with China's presence becoming more pronounced in places like Thailand and in the region more broadly, what if there was tension, how would Thailand respond?
I think Thailand would respond in an indecisive way. You know, like I think taking into considerations of the rise of China's and what Thailand has benefited from China's economic growth. I think in the past 2 or 3 decades, we have increasingly reliance on China, especially in the economic area. So I think the Thai elite still is cling on this kind of economic performance, by closing tie with the Chinese, and that would sort of consolidate its own political powers at home. So I think that's the immediate interest that they are thinking about, like when they think about China and United States. So whenever the U.S., as I mentioned in my remarks, that if Thailand thinks that the United States kind of pushing Thailand to do certain things, and Thailand would have to consider China factors at the background. So it's very sensitive. Like I think now like the power competition just like shaped the environment where the Thai policymakers think like the increasing cooperation with the United States would be equal to like decreasing tie with the Chinese, and a lot of people think about this. If you look at the recent survey among the Thai military officers, a couple of years ago, done by the Australian scholars, you can see that like in that survey, the Thai military official even thought that the United States is a bigger threat to Thailand securities compared to the Chinese. So in that sense, like whenever they increase cooperation with the United States, they would have to think that that would be looked by the Chinese in a negative way, and could get a backlash to Thai economy. So I think so the Thai would try to avoid any decisive decisions when when the United States and China have increased tensions in for example, like in the Taiwan Strait. I think the Thai would not. I think if you look at the aftermath of the 9/11, that could be one of the closest scenarios when the United States asked for Thailand, support for the global war on terror, and the Thaksin administrations kind of refused in the first place, to do so. So that would be the automatic response from the Thai policymakers. I think at the current moment it's even worse than the Thaksin administrations. So since the coup, that needs a long times to solve these kind of issues from Thai-U.S. relations.
Thank you, Paul. We started a little bit later. We went a little bit over. I want to thank you all for your attention this morning, both here in the root room and in the virtual room. I'd like to thank our speakers, Ambassador Tani Sangrat, Catherine Del Pino, and Larry Redmond, and Dr. Pong Pisut in Bangkok, especially for staying up later, and Melissa Brown, who had to leave a little bit earlier. I wanted to bring attention, you can get it outside. There's a report that we did on the last bilateral dialogue that we held in 2018. And so it was basically a white paper to project and strengthen relations between Thailand and the United States. And so if you haven't read it, I urge you to take a copy on the way out. This is the first hybrid event we have done. This is our first in-person event, along with the virtual event since the pandemic started just over 3 years ago. And it's taken a lot of time and effort in how to coordinate this. And I'm sure we'll work out the kinks as we go along, but I think it's by and large gone well. And I want to thank 3 people in particular for that. I'd like to thank Olivia Yardley and Vanessa Crawford, who work in the Asia Foundation's Washington office. And I also like to thank the cooperation we've received from the Royal Thai Embassy, particularly Mr. Basu Sirivara Tonbun, who's the political counselor at the Thai Embassy. So thank you for that. And so with that, we will adjourn, and we look forward to talking more about U.S.-Thai relations, as well as U.S. relations with other countries more broadly in the coming months and years. So thank you again, and please thank our panelists.